We are back with another deep dive. We're going to take a look at Andrew Chafin today. His season, his future is definitely one of the bigger question marks of the team this offseason. But we're also going to take a lot of the episode and talk about Mark Connor, who is the club's new director of amateur scouting for the Tigers organization, hired made this weekend, and minor league signing, re-signing, I guess technically in the organization as well. So some housekeeping stuff all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, October 31st. Happy Halloween, everybody. 2022. Thank you for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Not home, out of town, different-ish setup than you're used to, for sure. Hopefully the audio quality is okay. If it's not, I'm sorry. I will be home very shortly, just a weekend thing. So we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming as far as that goes. But hopefully the audio and the visual audio and I forget the word. The video and the audio are both pretty solid for this one. So we have some stuff to talk about. Pretty not a jam-packed weekend or anything. We're not going to have any of those until after the World Series is over, but certainly a weekend with some news and notes. I think I want to start with Miguel Del Pozo in the Tigers minor league system. So he was brought back on a minor league deal this past weekend, a couple of days ago. Was it Friday? Might have even been Thursday or Friday. He was brought back on a minor league deal for the Detroit Tigers. Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of people were questioning. I got a lot of questions that were like, why was this dude a priority? Or why was this something that they wanted to make sure they got out in front of and really hammered home and kind of more so guaranteed, right, that he'd be back and really get him under contract or whatnot. And look, first off, you need organizational depth. Like, you can't come in and I know we've talked about a massive overhaul and I still think that a lot of changes are coming, but that doesn't mean necessarily that every single person on the 40-man. We've talked about, again, we've talked about potentially half of this 40-man roster being legitimately I don't know, having a case for half of this 40-man to not return and be gone next season. So I'm not trying to take away from that because I still wholeheartedly believe that. But there are some dudes in this system that you look at and there's still some stuff to work with. And Miguel Del Pozo is somebody that is kind of been flying under the radar for a while now. And he's kind of what we presuming that Scott Harris wants out of pitchers. Like he has really solid strikeout numbers. His walk numbers are going down, and they were never even really too terribly high to start with. He's a lefty. He has presumably healthy. He's pitched quite a few innings in the minors over the last, I don't know, 5-6 years. Like he's put together a pretty solid minor league career here. And for organizational depth, I think Evan Woodbury pointed out online and he said something that I really agreed with and that I had the same thought of, and that's that at the end of the season this year, I really thought that Miguel Del Pozo was somebody that the Tigers were going to take a legitimate look at for replacing one of those injured relievers or just pitchers in general toward the end of the season. I thought he might have gotten a look. Now, if you remember, in 2021, Del Pozo got a look at the major league level. And I mean, it was like 5 innings, I think 5-6 innings. He only appeared in 5 or 6 games, but they were solid innings. Didn't get, torched in that outing. So in those outings, rather, in that stint, I should say. So that's fine. Good for him. But when looking at his AAA numbers the last couple of years, in AAA in 2021, he had a 2.82 ERA, a sub-1 whip, a 5.2 hit per 9, a 3.8 walk per 9, and a 12.7 K per 9. Really solid stuff. And then in 2022, he had a 3.88 ERA, so a little bit higher, but still a sub 4. A 1.125 whip, a 7.4 hit per nine, a sub 1 home run per nine this year, which he didn't have in 2021, a 2.7 walk per nine, down quite a bit, and then still an 11.1 K per nine. So, I mean, this is a guy who's been a legitimate threat out of the pen for the Toledo Mud Hens for a couple of years now. And I don't know. I like him, and I'm totally cool with this. I don't think that this was like, at the top of their board. They're like, amongst all things, we have to bring back Miguel Del Pozo. But at the same time, I think that you look at the numbers and you look at how he's performed over the last couple of years, and you kind of understand why they were like, hey, in a season where, or in an off season rather, where we're going to have a lot of overhaul, I think it's important to bring this dude back. And again, organizational depth. Every team needs it. You have a 40-man roster with 26 MLB roster spots, right? You have 14 dudes that you need depth wise to be able to call up at the drop of a hat. And I really like the concept of Miguel Del Pozo being one of those guys that is called upon, whether it comes to injury or he just has a really hot start to the season and one of the fringe bullpen guys maybe struggles at the beginning of the season, whatever it may be. I am totally fine with this. He's going to be 30. The Tigers clearly offered him a decent, it was a minor league contract, but a decent minor league deal because he didn't even reach, like a ton of minor league free agency stuff. So cool to see. Cool to see. I'm totally fine with it. I'm not saying that this is, if he didn't come back, I wouldn't have lost sleep. I wouldn't have been like, oh my goodness, what is Scott Harris doing? But when we talk about what we're presuming a Scott Harris guy looks like, I think that it's pretty easy to see that Del Pozo, again, for organizational depth purposes, this is not a huge deal, but it's news and we got to talk about it, and I think it makes sense, and I think that's really what this comes down to. This makes sense in my head. I very much understand why he's being brought back, and I don't disagree with the logic whatsoever. So there you go. Miguel Del Pozo will be back in 2023. Next thing on the docket, we need to take a look at our new director of amateur scouting. I think Evan Petzold broke the news. I think he was first on it. Broke the news that Mark Connor is the new club's director of amateur scouting. He spent the last 13 seasons with the San Diego Padres. From 2015 to 2021, I want to say, he was their director of amateur scouting. And then in 2022, this season, got reassigned to it was not an assistant general manager. This is actually really funny if you're a fan of The Office. It was not technically an assistant GM. He was an assistant to the general manager. So that's slightly different role there. He did field operations and stuff, I know, with that role as well. But I mean, this is a guy that is had his hand in being pretty largely responsible for a Padres system that for a solid 4 years was a top 10 farm system in the game of baseball, right? All the benefits they're reaping now, the Padres at the major league level, all stemmed from a phenomenal minor league system in 2018, 19, especially 2017, 18, maybe more so. And yeah, this was their director of scouting. We talked about last week that they wanted to still bring in a director of scouting. So that is what this move is. Again, I mean, the Padres system, really solid. Scott Harris seems super pumped about it. Yeah, I like. There's not, it's hard to analyze. There's not too much of like, this. There's not stats for front office people, right? But at the end of the day, this is a dude again that had his a big responsibility in building a really solid and legitimate farm system over there in San Diego. And so when it comes to the amateur scouting side of things, the MLB draft, right? That's a large part, pretty much all of their job. It's very clear that Scott Harris looks at this farm system and goes, "This is how winners are made." Right? That's how consistent winners are made. They go in and they build legitimate farm systems. They succeed in the draft, and he has now brought in two heavy hitters, real heavy hitters, when it comes to track record and pedigree of the MLB draft and of building farm systems through the MLB draft, and that's really exciting. Now, another thing they have to take a big step forward in is international prospects, because for so long, especially in the Dombrowski era, but for so long, this team just did not care at all about international prospects. And so many of the best players in the game of baseball today are international signees. So they're going to take a long look in that. I think for the most part, as far as the scouting side of the international prospects goes, I think they're holding on to some of the people that were already in place. But I think when it comes to, well, they already did replace the top dog, right? We talked about that assistant GM and all that. So yeah, it's a really exciting time, and this is another dude that's going to add to, hopefully, making this team significantly better at drafting. We talked about all the time during the Avila era that this was an organization that just consistently would miss on like every prospect that wasn't in the first round, like straight up, and that's not okay. And that's not what good organizations do. It was really our entire farm system for a while was just the top first round picks were highly regarded prospects, and then Tarek Skubal, who was a later round pick. And besides that, it was a whole lot of not too much. So the hope is that these guys come in and do a really good job. So that's a really exciting move. Really exciting move. Really pumped about it. And I guess we'll start seeing kind of the process as we get closer into the draft, but it'll start, probably this offseason. Start right away. So that's super exciting. Okay. We are going to wrap up. I have a few more comments about the front office, just some comments I saw on a couple of episodes from last week. So we'll talk about that. And then we will get into Andrew Chafin. Okay. But first, I got to tell y'all about our friends over at Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your football betting needs at the start of the new basketball season. Goodness. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MMA, boxing, and even golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, everybody. Welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate each and every one of y'all. Okay, so the only other thing I really want to say about the front office is we had a comment in one of the episodes. I forget which one exactly. Probably one of the new hires or firings within the front office, but had a comment from somebody that talked about the vacant general manager position. We've talked about it a few times on the show, but I just wanted to readdress it directly because I think if people are still not confused, but are still questioning like what's going on, who's really making the calls and whatever, Scott Harris is top dog. Yeah, Scott Harris is top dog. Scott Harris is making all the final decisions. He is in charge of everything. General manager, when that position is filled, and it will be filled, he has said that it's going to be filled. GM is no longer, for the Tigers organization, the position that runs the show. Scott Harris, president of baseball operations, that is the dude running the show. That is higher than general manager on the order, the pecking order of who's in charge. President of baseball ops is at the top. General manager is below that. So the GM will be, whoever it ends up being, will be kind of his right-hand man, so to say, right? For lack of a better term, I guess. And all the assistant GMs will then be below him, and then all the directors will be below the assistants, and so on and so forth. But Scott Harris is running the show. It does not matter. There's a lot of people, I still see a lot of comments just on Twitter and in replies in general that like, oh, we still don't have a GM who, like, we need a GM so badly. It's not that much of a necessity right now. And if we just didn't fill it, we will. But if we just didn't fill it, it wouldn't matter. Scott Harris is running the show. It's just for so many years, people, like Dombrowski was the GM, and it was like, oh, Dombrowski's the GM. He calls the shots. He does everything. And now there's so many more positions that they keep adding, and it's only the only purpose really for them is just to be able to poach people. Like, oh, we'll technically give you a promotion. Like you're calling the shots still. But that is, I just wanted to clarify that because I still get some comments about that in some of my shows, and I still see comments about it on Twitter and social media and whatnot. So yeah, I just wanted to clear the air there. Scott Harris, president of baseball ops, top dog, highest position up there outside of the Ilitch family, obviously. So we'll see who he brings in as general manager. Apparently, the interview process has to be reasonably close. He said last week, maybe a week and a half ago now, that he had a list and whatnot, but hadn't started interviewing people. So I'd imagine that that's coming. But again, even if it's not something that happens it's not needed right when the free agency starts rather. He can do it kind of whenever he wants because he is in charge and he is making the decisions. Okay. Let's get into Andrew Chafin now. Phenomenal season. What is there to really say? I felt comfortable doing Chafin in an episode where we talked about like news and notes of other stuff just because there's not too much analysis. He's phenomenal. He's an incredible pitcher. He's one of the better relievers in the game of baseball. He has been for a couple of seasons now. He's great. He's a lefty. That adds value. Andrew Chafin is one of the premier relievers in the sport. And it's awesome that he's a Detroit Tiger for the time being. Just to clarify that point, I guess we'll talk about average exit velocity, 73rd percentile, hard hit percentage, 81st percentile, expected batting average, 86th percentile, expected slugging percentage, 86th percentile, K percentage, 78th percentile, walk 49th, but whiff 87th percentile, chase rate 89th percentile. I mean, he's phenomenal. The only thing he really struggled with was barrel percentage. He was in the 30th percentile. And I guess you maybe want to see him walk a few less batters, right? 49th percentile, right middle of the pack there. But I mean, as a whole, just he's lethal, man. He's so good. He is so good at his job. And it's a pleasure to watch. He had one stretch, I feel like, this season, right? One stretch there in the second half. It was like a week and a half long where he gave up like a couple home runs and we were like, oh no. And then he was fine. Like he's so good. And I think he might have gotten off to a little bit of a slow start too. I'm trying to remember back in April, but I feel like maybe in like the first couple of weeks of the season or something, people are like, oh no, he got hurt. Yeah, he started off hurt. That's what it was. And then he came back. Yeah. He's phenomenal though. That whatever, few and far between. Pitch mix really solid, and he's kind of an anomaly because he's consistently good. I mean, there's an argument he was the best reliever in baseball last year, which is 2021. I should probably start just saying years because last season might be 2022 now. There's an argument that he was one of the, if not the best lefty reliever in the game of baseball in 2021. He was unbelievable. Sub-2 ERA, just amazing. And I mean, he really only has like fastball slider. Like that's kind of all he throws. And the fastball isn't even like that fast. Like he throws like a 92 mile an hour fastball and then just a really, really, really good slider. And like that shows longevity in my eyes too. Like he's 32 going on 33. Like, I don't know if you're able to get that many whiffs and that many chases and that many swings and misses and strikeouts without an overpowering fastball, who says that you can't go and pitch until you're 40 if you want to, right? And he's such a great personality, and everybody loves Andrew Chafin and whatnot for sure. But it's just he is fascinating for so many reasons. Andrew Chafin is fascinating to me, and I'm sure to so many people. So really, really great year. Like I said, not too much else to even go over. I think everybody's pretty aware that he had a great season. The K percentage went up a little bit from 2021. The walk rate went up a hair from 2021. I guess if you really had to nitpick, you could say, maybe get like a little less walks. I mean, like the barrel rate maybe, but again, like he throws a sinker a lot, and he has the ability to miss barrels on that pitch when it's on. Like the barreled up pitches was mostly the four seam. I I don't know. I don't want to get too nitpicky. Like he's one of the better lefty relievers in the American League, and has been for a couple years now. So it's a pleasure that he is a Detroit Tiger. It's an honor, truly. So okay, not too terribly much. He's really good. I think the really intriguing conversation just comes with his future, because he's kind of got a weird contract going on, and we got to talk about what could happen with him next season. So we will do that right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. So talking Andrew Chafin, player option. And that's what this whole Andrew Chafin offseason is going to come down to. He's not like one of the more talked about stories going into the offseason, but I think that's more so because it's really just ball in his court. Like it's not really a situation where the Tigers can do a whole heck of a lot. Like he's got a player option. And if he wants to opt out, then guess what? He's going to opt out. And who knows what he's going to do, because he's such, in the best way possibly, such a weird guy. And like, I love him because he's a weird guy, but like he is. I'm not sure he really cares about winning. So like, I don't know if that hurts or helps us. I think he just wants to be able to like go home to his farm and like spend time with his wife and kids. Like I think baseball is like he clearly is very passionate. We see him scream and yell on the mound and stuff, and he very clearly is a competitive dude, like a very competitive dude. But I don't want to get this misconstrued as like he doesn't care about his job. No, he's really good at his job and cares about it for sure. It's just like I think he views it as like this is just work, like anybody else's like a job. You get up, you go to work, you make money for your family, you come home, and like that's I think I don't know him, but like that's just the vibe I get, because I don't like he doesn't watch baseball. He admitted he's like, yeah, I don't really watch baseball too much like when I'm home, and he's like, yeah. When we signed him, people asked him, like, hey man, how's it feel to join like this nice young core? And he's like, "Oh, I don't really know. I just like my agent told me that I was going to be a Tiger, and I said, okay, that's cool." I'm like, okay, dude, like that's great. I remember the injury to start the season. He missed the first few weeks, and when he came back, they asked him. They were like, "How does it feel? Like this bullpen's really clicking. How does it feel to join a bullpen that's been doing so well?" He's like, "Yeah, I haven't watched a game, but like I'm glad that everyone's doing well." Like, you know what I mean? He's such an anomaly that it almost stresses me out about whether he's going to opt in or out, because like who knows, like again, I don't think it's motivated by winning. I don't know how much of a factor money is. Like is 50,000 more a year gonna like push the needle one way or the other? Or like if his agent thinks he can get just a few bucks more, is that really gonna be worth opting out for him? How close to the Tigers to like his ranches, like in Detroit to like his farms. Like I don't know, man. He's just I love him. I love him, and I wish him nothing but the best. It stresses me out because I have no clue. He doesn't have quote unquote normal. That's probably not even the right word, but he doesn't have the motives, like the motivation that a lot of other free agents like outwardly appear to have. And maybe he does. Maybe, like, again, I don't know him. Maybe this is just completely misconstrued, but it's just, based on the comments he makes, it just, I don't know. He's a wild card, I guess is my point. He could really do anything and it wouldn't surprise me. That's really the point I want to drive home. So I don't know. We'll see. But player option, if he opts out, I mean, it'll suck for sure. But like, if you think you can get paid more, you think you can get paid more. And that's just it at the end of the day. Um, I made during the trade deadline, I made our post trade deadline episode here. We talked about the fact that Andrew Chafin, love him like crazy, but I didn't understand why he was still on this team after the trade deadline. And the only thing that people were saying to really combat what I was saying was, oh, it's because he talked to the front office and he's like guaranteed to opt in to the player option. And we want him next year. That doesn't really answer like my point, because my point was, hey, this front office lacks complete creativity. No one ever gets traded in this organization, at least in the Avila era. No one ever got traded with more than half a year of team control. And guess what? Rentals don't go for too much. So you need to trade players with more than just half a season of team control to get legitimate value. And I thought, and there's that was the only rebuttal that really somewhat I thought was justified. I was like, oh, other teams don't know if he'll opt in either. Sure, totally fair. But at the end of the day, I still think that I still stand by that. I still believe in that. It's just it's all player options are weird, man. It's just a weird situation on what's going to happen. So hopefully he opts in. Like I think the right move would have been to trade him, but at the same time, now that we didn't, like, please opt in. I don't want to have you just for one season when we were terrible. That would be a waste of everybody's time. Not his, I guess. He got his check, but waste of all of our time. You know what I mean? So yeah, I hope that he opts in, and we'll see what happens with the bullpen this year. If you want to talk about odds that he's back, again, player options are weird. If he opts in, this sounds so Captain Obviousy, but like, if he opts in, he'll be back. Like, if he opts in, the Tigers aren't going to have him opt in and then like trade him. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe at the deadline, depending on where they're at. In which case, we will get way less for him this year than we would have gotten for him if we traded him at the 2022 deadline. That's always a possibility. Lefty relievers at the deadline go like crazy, so that's always that. There's always a chance for that. But I mean, yeah, I like if he opts in, then he's gonna be back. He's like an 85. Odds that he opts in, I have no clue. It's Andrew Chafin. He's a complete wild card. How about like we'll go with a 63. A 63. I'm not quite ready to give him that 65, that like mid or high 60s connotation, but I'm okay with a 63. I think, yeah, maybe a 60. Low 60s. Somewhere in the low 60s. Because again, he opts in, he's back, but I have no clue what's going on in that dude's head and if he's going to come back or not. Zero idea. There's been no conversations about it. There were some people that said like, oh, he's going to opt in because his farm is like close to one of his farms is like close to like Detroit. And that's why, like, I don't know him. I don't know if that's true. Who knows, man? Who knows? We'll see. But fact of the matter is, one of the better relievers in the game of baseball, one of the better lefty relievers in the game of baseball, certainly one of the better relievers in the American League. If he opts in, you have him for another season. Crazy cool guy. Cool guy, Andrew Chafin. I think that's all I got for you. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. For your next listen, check on the Locked On Sports Today podcast. From the games that matter most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. The Locked On Sports Today podcast on Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Yeah, I think that's all I got for you. A little bit shorter today. This is like how long they're supposed to be, but a little bit shorter for my standards today. Again, hope the audio quality was decent. If it's not, I'm really sorry. I'll be back home, I think, in 2 days. So we'll be chilling then. Andrew Chafin, news and notes. Yeah, I think that's it. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. Go blue. Paul's home, baby. Catch y'all tomorrow. Go Tigers.